Lena, a sharp-witted teenager with a knack for noticing the unusual, was the first to spot the distress signal. She saw a girl about her age frantically signaling from a nearby car. Her heart raced as she approached the bus driver, who initially dismissed her concern with skepticism. However, a quick glance in the rearview mirror drained the color from his face as he too recognized the distress signal. With no time to lose, the driver made a split-second decision that could change the fate of the unknown girl. Lena's gaze was locked onto the rear window of the blue car as it zigzagged through traffic, her heart pounding against her rib cage. The SOS signals she had seen were clear as day in her mind. Leaning closer to the bus driver, she urged him to keep the car in sight. "Please, it's important," she insisted, her eyes never leaving the vehicle as it took a sudden turn down a less traveled road. The bus driver frowned, his skepticism still apparent. "Look, kid, I don't want to get involved in anything," he began, but the fear in Lena's voice cut him off. "Just follow for a few minutes, please. I have a really bad feeling about this," she pleaded. With a reluctant grunt, the driver accelerated slightly, keeping a cautious distance from the car. Passengers murmured among themselves, casting curious glances at Lena before returning to their phones and books. Ignoring the growing whispers, Lena remained sharply focused on the vehicle ahead. As the car slowed, the girl in the back seat looked directly at Lena, her eyes wide with terror. The message was unmistakable, she was desperately pleading for help. The bus trailed the car into the suburbs, and Lena's mind raced with a mix of fear and determination. What could she possibly do? In a moment of clarity, Lena grabbed her phone and dialed 911, providing the operator with their location and describing the situation in detail. "We need help now," she urged, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. Meanwhile, the bus driver, spurred on by Lena's determination, continued to follow the car at a safe distance. The vehicle pulled into a secluded driveway, and Lena watched as the girl frantically tried to signal one last time. As the bus came to a stop at a discreet distance, Lena could hear the faint wail of sirens approaching. The police arrived just in time, surrounding the car and apprehending the driver. The girl was rescued, her fear slowly dissolving into relief as she was brought to safety. The bus erupted into applause, passengers now fully aware of the gravity of the situation. Lena felt a wave of triumph and gratitude wash over her. Thanks to her quick thinking and unwavering resolve, a life had been saved. The bus driver, once skeptical, gave Lena a nod of respect and a quiet, "Well done, kid." The harrowing ordeal left Lena with a newfound sense of purpose and the realization that sometimes, even the smallest actions can make a monumental difference. Should she call the police? What would she even say? Lena's thoughts were interrupted as the vehicle pulled into the driveway of a quiet, unassuming house. The girl in the car glanced around frantically before disappearing from sight as the car door opened. "This is as far as I go," the bus driver announced, bringing the bus to a stop with a hiss. Lena hesitated for a moment before darting off the bus, her decision made. She couldn't leave the girl alone in whatever trouble she was in. Sneaking closer to the house, Lena hid behind a nearby tree, watching as the front door closed behind the girl and her apparent captor. The neighborhood was eerily quiet, the only sounds being the distant bark of a dog and the soft rustling of leaves. Lena took out her phone, her fingers hovering over the emergency call button. She paused, thinking she needed evidence. Quietly, she crept closer, her phone ready to capture anything unusual. Peering through the living room window, Lena could see the girl arguing with a middle-aged woman. The conversation seemed heated, though the glass muffled their voices. Lena strained to listen, catching bits of phrases like "not safe" and "must leave." What was happening inside that house? Suddenly, the curtains snapped shut, and Lena ducked down, her heart in her throat. Had they seen her? She waited, holding her breath, until the silence reassured her that she hadn't been caught. Glancing around, she noted other houses nearby, potential sources of help or at least witnesses. Lena needed a plan, and fast. Her deliberation was cut short by the sound of sirens in the distance. Panic surged through her. Had someone else called the police, or was it unrelated to the girl in the house? Either way, the too early arrival of the police could complicate things. She needed to act quickly but carefully, balancing her urge to rescue the girl with the need to avoid reckless mistakes. Lena made her decision. She would approach the neighbors. Maybe they knew something about the people living in the house or had noticed any unusual activities. She moved to the next door and rang the bell, rehearsing her questions in her mind, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. As the door creaked open, Lena took a deep breath, steeling herself to dive deeper into the mystery. She pushed the door gently, peering inside as her voice caught slightly, calling out, "Hello?" The house echoed back at her, the smell of must and old wood mingling in the air. She stepped in just enough to see the dimly lit hallway stretching out before her, pictures lining the walls, their eyes seeming to watch her every move. The door creaked further open, and an elderly woman appeared, peeking around the edge. Her eyes, lined with years of wisdom, fixed on Lena. "Yes. What do you want?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and caution. Lena flashed a nervous smile. "I'm sorry to disturb you. I just moved nearby and thought I'd introduce myself and learn a bit about the neighborhood." She leaned against the door frame, trying to appear nonchalant. "This house seems interesting. Has it been in your family long?" she asked, glancing around at the visible parts of the house. The woman hesitated, then relaxed slightly. "A few decades, yes. Why do you ask?" Lena shrugged, trying to seem casual. "Just trying to connect with my new neighbors. Hear their stories. Makes a place feel more like home, you know." The woman narrowed her eyes, studying Lena intently. "Most people don't bother much with old tales," she remarked, a hint of suspicion in her tone. "What's really bringing you here?" Inside, Lena's anxiety spiked, but she maintained a light expression. The truth was too risky. "Honestly, I just enjoy history. Always have," she lied, hoping it sounded convincing. "History, huh?" The woman mulled over Lena's words, then abruptly nodded towards the street. "Well, I think you've got enough history for today," she said, her tone final. Before Lena could respond, the door shut firmly in her face. Staring at the closed door, Lena's resolve hardened. No answers here, but maybe the next house would be different. She stepped back, squaring her shoulders for the next attempt. Momentarily stunned by the rejection, she blinked away the sting, shook her head to clear her thoughts, and moved towards the next house with renewed determination. Her steps quickened with determination, the gravel crunching softly under her shoes. "No looking back," she murmured to herself, adjusting her backpack as she approached the next door. Her knuckles rapped firmly against the wood, each knock echoing with her resolve. Lena's afternoon became a relentless sequence of knocks, each door revealing a new resident. She greeted each one with a hopeful smile, inquiring about the blue house and its mysterious occupants. Responses varied from brief nods to polite dismissals, "Sorry, can't really say." Each interaction left her with little more than the last, her notebook frustratingly empty of useful information. Faces blurred together in a pattern of indifference. "Never really see anyone there," one muttered before gently closing the door. Another simply shook his head, saying, "Don't know anything about them." Lena's questions seemed to bounce off an invisible wall of apathy, her frustration simmering with each house she approached. With each fruitless encounter, Lena felt her spirits wane. Her initial resolve was now fraying at the edges, the repeated rejections turning her brisk walk into a slow trudge. "Why won't anyone say anything real?" she whispered, feeling the weight of an unseen barrier that kept everyone tight-lipped. Each shrugged shoulder and averted gaze added layers to the mystery, deepening her determination to uncover the truth. Reaching the end of the block, Lena leaned against a lamppost, exhaustion seeping into her bones. She looked back down the street, the row of houses staring back, uniformly silent, their windows like eyes that wouldn't meet hers. A sigh escaped her lips. "What now?" she asked the empty air, her gaze drifting to the ground, unsure of her next move in this increasingly puzzling endeavor. Lost in her thoughts of defeat, Lena barely registered the sound until her name called out distinctly from behind snapped her to attention. She turned to see a figure jogging toward her, his features becoming clearer with each step. It was John, the bus driver, his face etched with concern. Surprise flickered across Lena's face as she realized he had followed her, perhaps offering the ally she so desperately needed in this confounding quest. Lena waited for John to catch up, her heart lifting slightly at the sight of a familiar face. John finally reached her, panting slightly. "Lena, I saw you walking from my route. Everything okay?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern as he looked her over. Lena shook her head, her worries momentarily forgotten in the face of his unexpected kindness. "I've been better, honestly. Just trying to figure out a mystery," she admitted, offering him a wry smile. "I couldn't stop thinking about that girl we saw," John confessed, his voice low. "Those SOS signals have been haunting me all day. I needed to do something." His eyes met Lena's, filled with a mix of resolve and worry. Lena nodded, her own determination reigniting at his words. "I feel the same. It's like we were meant to see it," she responded, the shared concern forging a sudden, strong bond between them. "So what's the plan?" John asked, his stance suggesting readiness for action. "I tried asking around, but hit dead ends everywhere. No one seems to know or they aren't telling," Lena said, frustration lacing her voice. John's jaw set with determination. "Let's go back together then. Two sets of eyes are better than one." Relief and gratitude filled Lena, knowing she no longer had to face this alone. "Thanks, John." "Really," she murmured. With a nod, they started back toward the house. The afternoon sun cast long shadows on the sidewalk, mirroring the growing anticipation between them. "We need to be sneaky about this," Lena whispered, her eyes scanning for any unwanted attention. John nodded in agreement, his presence comforting. They moved with purpose, each step taking them closer to uncovering the truth hidden within the walls of the mysterious house. Lena and John crept toward the house, their steps soft against the crunchy gravel. Reaching the first window, they exchanged a glance before peering through the slightly grimy glass. The interior was dimly lit, casting long shadows across what looked like a cluttered living room. They moved slowly along the side of the house, careful to stay out of sight, each window offering them a fragmented view of the life inside. At the rear window, they paused. Inside, they saw the girl they had seen earlier. Her eyes were wide with fear, darting around as she argued with the same middle-aged woman Lena had spotted before. Lena's heart pounded as she watched the heated exchange. "We have to do something," she whispered to John, her voice trembling with urgency. John nodded, his eyes never leaving the scene inside. "Let's get a closer look. Maybe we can find out what's really going on." They continued their careful surveillance, inching closer to the back door. The air was thick with tension, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. As they approached, Lena felt a surge of determination. This was their chance to make a difference. To uncover the truth and save the girl from whatever danger she was in. They exchanged one last glance, a silent agreement passing between them. They were in this together, and they wouldn't stop until they had the answers they sought. The girl sat at a table, her expression one of distress. Two figures, a man and a woman, sat across from her with their backs to the window. None of them seemed aware of Lena and John's anxious eyes observing from the darkness outside. John shifted uncomfortably, whispering, "Maybe we should call the cops." His voice was laced with concern, the gravity of the situation pressing down on him. Lena chewed her lip, her eyes fixed on the girl. "I know, but what if that makes things worse for her?" she murmured back, torn between the urgency of the moment and John's earnest expression. Her mind raced as she considered their options. "If we call now, we might scare them off, or worse," she whispered, her voice barely audible. John nodded slowly, his face a mask of worry. "You're right, but doing nothing feels wrong too," he replied, his hands clenched into fists. The tension between taking immediate action and waiting hung heavily in the air. Finally, they decided to hold off on calling the police. "Let's just watch a little longer, try to understand what's happening," Lena suggested, her eyes not leaving the window. John agreed reluctantly, his gaze shifting back to the dim figures inside the house. They settled into a watchful silence, hoping for a clearer understanding that would guide their next move without escalating the danger. The muffled sound of shouting suddenly broke through the quiet, causing Lena and John to flinch. The girls' cries pierced the evening air, urgent and frightened. "We can't just stand here," Lena whispered, her voice thick with worry. John put a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his own face lined with concern. "I get it, Lena. We can't rush this," John said quietly, understanding her hesitation. "A bad call could make things worse for her." Lena nodded, her eyes never leaving the shadowed window of the house. "Exactly. We need a solid plan, not a panic move." They stood together, the decision to avoid a hasty police call weighing heavily on them as they strained to hear more from inside the house. The urgency of the situation settled between them, intensifying their resolve to act wisely. The girls' cries underscored the need for quick thinking. "We have to do something soon, John. We can't let this go on," Lena said, her voice firm yet tinged with frustration. John looked around, his mind racing. "Let's think this through. There must be a way to help her without just barging in." They mulled over their limited options, each aware that time was slipping away. The tension between caution and action grew as they continued to listen. Every shout from the house tugged at Lena's instincts to rush in. "It's hard to stand back," she confessed, biting her lip. John's face mirrored her conflict. "I know, but we can't mess this up." "We have to be smart, Lena," he replied. Their conversation was a low, tense exchange, balancing the need to act with the imperative to remain prudent. As they stood, the girls' sobbing grew louder, a stark reminder of the stakes at hand. "We need evidence, anything solid we can use," Lena decided, her resolve hardening with each cry. John nodded, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of what to do next. "Right. Let's gather what we can and then decide our next move carefully," he agreed. They knew they had to build their case before stepping forward. Lena moved with silent purpose. Crouching near the parked car, she quickly snapped photos of the license plate and the vehicle's make and model. Every click of the camera felt like a step closer to unraveling the mystery. Glancing around to ensure no one was watching, she captured a few more shots of the car's position relative to the house, storing potential evidence on her phone. Next, Lena circled the house, taking pictures from various angles. She documented each window, the front door, and any unusual details that might prove crucial later. Her phone camera clicked steadily, capturing the fading lights play on the dusty windows and the overgrown garden that seemed to swallow the lower half of the house in shadows and mystery. John kept watch while Lena worked, then took his turn with the camera. He aimed it through the least obstructed windows, trying to get clear interior shots without alerting anyone inside. His hands were steady as he focused on capturing images that might provide clues. Suddenly, a loud crash from inside the house made both their hearts race. John snapped a few final shots before retreating to Lena's side. "We have enough," he whispered, his voice urgent. "Let's get out of here and call the cops with what we've got." They slipped away into the night, their phones now filled with crucial evidence. As they hurried back to safety, Lena felt a surge of hope. They had a plan, and soon, they would bring help to the girl trapped inside that house. Capturing the scene inside, the digital zoom revealed more than their eyes could from their hidden spot in the shadows. Time was slipping away as the sky darkened, but Lena and John worked with a practiced efficiency born of urgent necessity. They communicated with gestures and whispers, coordinating their efforts to cover all bases. "Got it?" Lena asked in a hushed tone. "Yeah, all clear here," John whispered back, checking the photos on his phone one last time to ensure they were usable. With their collection of images secured, Lena and John stepped back to assess their next move. "We have enough to show the police now," Lena confirmed, scrolling through the photos. John nodded, his expression grave but determined. "Let's find a safe spot to make the call," he suggested. They moved off, ready to take the final step in their improvised investigation. Lena and John found a secluded spot across the street, hidden behind a tall hedge. From here, they could keep an eye on the house while staying out of sight. John pulled out his phone, ready to dial, while Lena kept her eyes fixed on the dark windows of the house, watching for any sign of movement. John spoke in hushed tones into the phone, his voice urgent yet controlled. "We need someone to check this out, but it has to be discreet," he stressed, glancing towards Lena for affirmation. She nodded, her expression tense as she continued to scan the house. Their voices were low, blending into the rustling leaves around them as they emphasized the need for a careful approach. While John relayed their findings to the dispatcher, Lena's gaze remained locked on the house, her hands clenched tightly around her phone, ready to call out if anything changed. Every shadow seemed to move, every flicker of light made her heart skip, but she stayed alert, determined not to miss anything crucial. "Yes, we have photos and a license plate number," John continued, providing all the specifics they had collected. He described the car, the people they saw, and the behavior that raised their suspicions. "Please, we need someone here quickly, but quietly," he added, his voice a whisper of urgency. As John finished the call, they both felt the weight of the moment. They had done everything they could to gather evidence and alert the authorities. Now, they just had to wait and hope their efforts would lead to the girl's rescue. The tension was palpable, but so was their resolve. Together, they had taken a stand, and now they braced themselves for what was to come, their eyes never leaving the shadowy house that held so many secrets. Desperation hung in the air as Lena listened, her body tense with anticipation, hoping their efforts would prompt the right kind of response. After ending the call, they settled back into their hidden spot, their eyes never straying from the house. The weight of the situation bore down on them as they waited for the police to arrive. The silence was heavy, filled only with the distant sounds of the night and their own rapid heartbeats. "They'll be here soon," John murmured, more to reassure himself than Lena. The quiet of the night was abruptly shattered by a crescendo of thuds and shouts coming from the house. Lena's head whipped towards the noise, her eyes wide with alarm. John gripped her arm, his expression mirroring her shock. The sounds of a struggle were unmistakable, each crash and raised voice slicing through the calm, pushing the tension to new heights. Lena and John locked eyes, each reading the other's resolve. Without a word, they knew waiting was no longer an option. "We have to go, now," Lena whispered, urgency lacing her voice. John nodded sharply, the decision firm between them. They couldn't stand by while the situation inside escalated dangerously. With a quick mutual nod, they abandoned their initial plan of waiting for the police. The immediate crisis inside the house demanded action, not patience. They moved quickly, dodging shadows and keeping low to the ground as they approached the house, driven by the imperative to intervene before it was too late. Their steps were quiet against the gravel as they edged closer to the front door, adrenaline surging through Lena, her heart pounding in her ears. John moved with equal caution, his eyes scanning for any sign of movement inside the house. Every nerve was on alert as they prepared for what might come next. As they neared the door, the muffled sounds of distress grew louder, more urgent. Each shout and bang propelled them forward faster, their readiness peaking. Lena's breaths came quick and shallow, her mind focused only on the task ahead. John kept pace, his determination clear in the set of his jaw and the alertness of his gaze. At the front door, John quickly signaled for Lena to stay back while he assessed the situation, their combined focus sharpening as they prepared to confront whatever awaited them inside. John scanned the ground and picked up a hefty branch, stripping it of smaller twigs. He hefted it, testing its weight, then nodded to himself, satisfied it could serve as a makeshift weapon. Lena watched him, her anxiety mixing with a surge of resolve. They were not just observers anymore, they were stepping into the fray, prepared to protect themselves and the girl inside. John turned to Lena, holding up one hand and silently ticking off 3 fingers to coordinate their move. Lena positioned herself by the door, her muscles tensed for action. John's gaze was focused, his finger dropping with each silent count. Their breaths held in sync, the quiet before the storm was palpable as they readied themselves for what was to come. On the silent count of 3, Lena's leg shot out, her boot connecting with the door with a resounding thud. The door flew open, banging against the wall inside, the sudden noise startlingly loud in the quiet house. They paused for a fraction of a second, listening for any reaction to their abrupt entrance, hearts pounding in the sudden silence that followed the echo. Without hesitation, John charged into the house, branch raised and ready to confront whatever awaited them. His figure was tense but determined as he swept into the dimly lit living room, every sense heightened, prepared to use his makeshift weapon if necessary. Lena lingered at the doorway for a split second, watching him take the lead. Then quickly stepped in behind him, her phone held up in front of her, ready to record. Her eyes darted around the interior, seeking out any immediate threats or the girl they were there to protect. Each sound heightened her alertness as she followed John's lead, ready to document what unfolded next in their daring intervention. Inside the dim room, John's voice boomed, "Everyone back off." He waved the branch authoritatively, his stance wide and commanding. The few people inside froze, their attention snapping to him and the branch he wielded. The girl, momentarily forgotten, looked up with a startled expression, her eyes wide as she assessed the sudden shift in her predicament. Lena stepped beside John, her phone capturing the scene. The tension in the room was palpable, every second stretching as they confronted the unknown. John's presence was imposing, and Lena's resolve was unyielding. Together, they were a force of determination and courage, ready to do whatever it took to protect the girl and bring the situation to a resolution. John scanned the ground and picked up a hefty branch, stripping it of smaller twigs. He hefted it, testing its weight, then nodded to himself, satisfied it could serve as a makeshift weapon. Lena watched him, her anxiety mixing with a surge of resolve. They were not just observers anymore, they were stepping into the fray, prepared to protect themselves and the girl inside. John turned to Lena, holding up one hand and silently ticking off 3 fingers to coordinate their move. Lena positioned herself by the door, her muscles tensed for action. John's gaze was focused, his finger dropping with each silent count. Their breaths held in sync, the quiet before the storm was palpable as they readied themselves for what was to come. On the silent count of 3, Lena's leg shot out, her boot connecting with the door with a resounding thud. The door flew open, banging against the wall inside, the sudden noise startlingly loud in the quiet house. They paused for a fraction of a second, listening for any reaction to their abrupt entrance, hearts pounding in the sudden silence that followed the echo. Without hesitation, John charged into the house, branch raised and ready to confront whatever awaited them. His figure was tense but determined as he swept into the dimly lit living room, every sense heightened, prepared to use his makeshift weapon if necessary. Lena lingered at the doorway for a split second, watching him take the lead. Then quickly stepped in behind him, her phone held up in front of her, ready to record. Her eyes darted around the interior, seeking out any immediate threats or the girl they were there to protect. Each sound heightened her alertness as she followed John's lead, ready to document what unfolded next in their daring intervention. Inside the dim room, John's voice boomed, "Everyone back off." He waved the branch authoritatively, his stance wide and commanding. The few people inside froze, their attention snapping to him and the branch he wielded. The girl, momentarily forgotten, looked up with a startled expression, her eyes wide as she assessed the sudden shift in her predicament. Lena stepped beside John, her phone capturing the scene. The tension in the room was palpable, every second stretching as they confronted the unknown. John's presence was imposing, and Lena's resolve was unyielding. Together, they were a force of determination and courage, ready to do whatever it took to protect the girl and bring the situation to a resolution. Lena held up her phone, the screen prominently displaying the dialed emergency call. "Police are on their way," she stated firmly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The assailants glanced at the glowing screen, the reality of the threat dawning on them as they weighed their options. Voices raised in confusion and anger as the room erupted into shouts. Someone yelled for calm while another protested innocence. The tension thickened, every shout adding to the chaos, teetering dangerously close to violence. Lena and John stood their ground, united in their resolve to keep the situation from spiraling out of control. Suddenly, the flashing blue and red lights of police cars pierced the windows, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Relief mixed with apprehension filled Lena as she glanced outside, seeing officers quickly disembarking and approaching the house. Their timely arrival felt like a reprieve, but the night was far from over. As the police entered, the chaos began to subside. John lowered the branch, stepping aside to let the officers take control. Lena quickly started explaining their actions, showing the officers her phone and the photos they had taken. "We thought she was in danger," she explained earnestly, recounting their decision to intervene. The officers listened, their expressions unreadable as they assessed the scene. To their astonishment, the officers clarified the situation, revealing that the girl was actually an actress rehearsing for a film. The supposed captors were fellow actors practicing a dramatic scene. John and Lena exchanged bewildered glances, the tension draining from their bodies as they absorbed the bizarre truth. The girl, still in character, apologized for any fright they might have caused, explaining the realism they aimed for in their performance. As the reality of the misunderstanding unfolded, a mix of relief and embarrassment washed over Lena and John. The police officers gently explained that no harm was intended, and the dramatics were all part of an act. Laughter began to replace tension among everyone present. The actors, now out of character, expressed gratitude for Lena and John's concern, acknowledging the courage it took to intervene. The officers, satisfied that no crime had been committed, commended Lena and John for their vigilance. As the actors resumed their rehearsals, the police departed, leaving John and Lena to reflect on the night's events. Despite the confusion, their actions had been driven by genuine concern. A testament to their character. The experience, though intense, had ultimately reinforced their bond and their commitment to doing the right thing, even in the face of uncertainty. Sheepish grins spread around the room as everyone began to see the lighter side of the confusion. Despite the awkward mix-up, news of Lena's decisive actions spread quickly, earning her widespread admiration for her vigilance. Community members praised her bravery and quick thinking, sparking conversations about the importance of being observant and proactive. Lena's intervention, even though it was a false alarm, became a powerful example of community care in action. Lena soon became a celebrated figure in her community. Her story quickly spreading across social media. Posts praised her bravery and the lesson in courage she provided. Interviews and community talks followed, where Lena shared her experience, emphasizing the importance of looking out for one another. Her accidental heroism turned into a rallying cry for community vigilance, inspiring others to take action in their own neighborhoods. Transformed by the incident, Lena took on a new role as an advocate for safety and preparedness. She collaborated with local law enforcement to host safety workshops, her story serving as a cornerstone for discussions on preventive action and community support. Lena's accidental heroism not only made her a local hero but also sparked a dedicated cause. changing her life and potentially the lives of others in her community. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom.